Taiwanese manufacturer Foxconn has just announced that it will scale back a planned $10 billion factory in Wisconsin. So now this was under a deal with the state of Wisconsin, announced on Tuesday. Foxconn will reduce its planned investment to $672 million from what was originally planned to be a $10 billion investment in Wisconsin that was supposed to have about 13,000 new jobs. Now, of course, I've talked about how that original deal was quite the boondoggle. That it would be an incredibly expensive amount of investment from the taxpayers of Wisconsin for just 13,000 jobs. But it looks as though we're not going to get that many jobs. In fact, the most that we would get is about 1,454 jobs in total. Great. So much for that. I mean, here's the thing. As somebody who, was in labor, manufacturing for a significant chunk of my life, I feel for them because those were, at one point, were good jobs, good union jobs. They are not anymore. And so, for the people in Wisconsin, I absolutely feel for you for that, and especially those who ended up paying, with their tax money for these breaks that are going to go to a very limited select number of jobs. It's almost as if all these projects, not only under Trump, but for example, the Keystone XL pipeline that was supposed to bring thousands and thousands of good-paying jobs, turned out to not. Weird. It's almost as if corporations lie. Now, according to Reuters, this is give me some background information here. The Foxconn Wisconsin deal was first announced at great fanfare at the White House in July 2017, with Trump boasting of it as an example of how this America First agenda could revive tech manufacturing. Again, it's not really America First when you're inviting a foreign company into Wisconsin, which all the money, of course, is pretty much going to get extracted, all the profit extracted not to the United States, but to executives in Taiwan, in China. So yeah, I don't see how that's really America First. But hey, jobs. Okay, so that's what this is always about. Okay, jobs, and then that translates into job approval for the politician that allows for those jobs. Now, for Foxconn, Reuters continues, the investment promise was an opportunity for its founder to build goodwill at a moment when Trump's trade policies threatened the company's cash cow, building Apple's iPhones in China, with, of course, you could almost call it slave-like conditions, slave labor for export to America. And then you have the whole issue of the Uyghurs being put into labor camps and all that. And so, yeah. And now, by the way, maybe as a result of the pandemic, but there is a specific item. You might have noticed that PlayStation 5s are not readily available for purchase. There is a specific part that Foxconn produces that is in very, very short supply right now. That goes not only to PlayStation 5s, but it goes into computers, cell phones. So there's a problem here when when it's so restricted to one or two companies that are built on exploitative labor practices. And this is what we wanted to bring to America. This is what Mitt Romney originally went to China when he was running for president, wanted to bring over. Remember, Foxconn in China had suicide nets. GPUs are not available either. Yes, because they're missing that particular component. And so now Foxconn is actually the world's largest manufacturer of electronic devices. And they had proposed the 20 million square foot campus in Wisconsin that would have been a gigantic investment, the biggest by a foreign-based company. They were supposed to, I guess, build flat panel display TV screens and other devices, but that, of course, did not happen. And the thing about this is that Foxconn already knew that it wasn't going to happen. In fact, industry executives, including some at the company itself, were skeptical of the plan from the beginning, pointing out that some of the crucial suppliers needed for flat panel display production were not located anywhere near Wisconsin. So, supply issues and all of that. And yet, because, thanks to Governor Scott Walker at the time, offering up such wonderful incentives, billions of dollars in incentives, tax breaks, and special deals, enticed Foxconn to go and build there. And of course, it turned out once again to blow up in the face of people in Wisconsin, the taxpayers, of course. Not only that, but you had critics that pointed out these taxpayer giveaways and provisions of the deal that granted extensive rights to water and allowed for the acquisition and demolition of houses through the process of eminent domain. As for 2019, the village where the plant located had paid just over $152 million for 132 properties to make way for Foxconn, plus had paid $7.9 million in relocation costs. According to village records obtained by Wisconsin Public Radio and analyzed by Wisconsin Watch. Already that's bad enough. So all those people were needlessly moved for no reason. Again, it gets worse. After abandoning its plans for advanced displays, Foxconn also later said that it would build smaller, earlier generation displays in Wisconsin, but that plan did not come to fruition either. So it's almost as if we cannot trust companies to not just take taxpayer money and run. Just saying. Now, Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers, Democrat, said that under this new deal negotiated by the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation and Foxconn, the company is now only eligible to receive $80 million in performance-based tax credits over 6 years if it meets employment and capital investment targets. He stressed that the incentives were in line with those available to any company. The state will reduce the tax credits authorized to $80 million from originally $2.85 billion. The original Wisconsin package also included local tax incentives, road and highway investments by state and local governments, which brought the total taxpayer-funded subsidies to more than $4 billion. Billion. And yes, not all that money has been spent, but some of it has by a place that's been hit pretty hard, not only by the recession, of course, but also now by the pandemic. To date, Wisconsin has spent probably around $400 million on road improvements, tax exemptions, grants to local governments for worker training and employment, and Mount Pleasant, the small town where the factory was supposed to be built, ended up actually taking on millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in debt that was supposed to be repaid by taxes generated by the project. And now they're, of course, not able to get that because there's only going to be, instead of 13,000 workers contributing higher wages towards taxes in the area, now you've got 1,500. Instead of old local businesses that would support this much larger workforce, now they're not going to be able to do that because there will be no 13,000 worker workforce and no supporting businesses to now support that, which means, of course, this town is left in a massive amount of debt and a massive hole and no way to get out of it because of Foxconn, because of this deal, because of Scott Walker, and because of Donald Trump. It's an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. Again, I absolutely 100% feel for the people who were there who got duped. And I'm talking about the workers here. People who were, thought that maybe finally they were going to have a chance at at what they would think was a competitive, a good job, a good paying job, and now they get completely screwed over it. Gigantic money sink. And now, as The Verge explains, quote, the original contract effectively reimbursed Foxconn for 15% of its capital investment and 70% of its payroll, provided it hit certain targets each year. This was an outlandishly lucrative subsidy. If Foxconn built an expensive and highly automated factory that employed few workers, the total expense per job would have come to around $1 million per job. In 2019, economist Timothy Bardick compiled a report at the request of the Evers administration and also found that Foxconn's incentives would actually fall around $172,000 to $290,000 per job. Average U.S. incentives are $24,000 per job, he wrote. Oof. Since the amendment, the per job subsidy is still a lot higher than the average. It would still be around $41,000. So again, it continues to be just an absolute boondoggle. The company would receive subsidies equal up to about 7% of wages, 10% of capital investment. However, that is in line with the state's general enterprise zone program, again, which is just nothing more than massive giveaways and goodies to giant corporations. So all of this, I wonder why. I mean, seriously, you know what? I'm incredibly tired of how this system works, how taxpayers have to foot the bill to get these gigantic, wealthy companies to come in and create a few jobs. I mean, it feels like a net loss, really. I don't understand how this is supposed to be something that is smart. How getting taxpayers to fund their own jobs. I mean, and that, of course, they end up getting taxed for working there for as well. And that labor, the value produced by their labor, gets then taken mostly by the executives. And they're left, they have what little is left over. It's ridiculous. It feels like it's a terrible deal for anyone who's not an executive. And apparently that's your problem. Capitalism. Look, a lot of small businesses don't get these giveaways. And they actually end up employing lots more people overall. It's really only large companies like your Walmarts, your Foxconns that come in. They have exploitive business practices. Amazon's the same way. They drain the communities. They destroy the small businesses by driving, in a lot of cases, driving wages down. Or making it so that they have a monopoly on certain businesses, or they can use their gigantic lobbying budgets to change laws in certain areas that will then favor them over other small businesses, or just or just other businesses in general. That's the problem. And then, as we've seen with Walmarts before, once they've done all that and their goodies dry up, well, then they pick up and leave. It's happened a million times, and yet the city governments still continue to do that. They fall for the same trick every time because, again, it comes down to, well, we need jobs. If there are more jobs, if more people are working, then even if they're shit jobs, I can sit there and I can boast about how I have created so many jobs in my administration, and that will get me to get reelected. And that's how the system is stacked against the workers and in favor of these giant corporations. But hey, even though you're kind of screwed, at least you got a job, right? Well, in the case of people in Mount Pleasant, Wisconsin, that's not the case. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.